A technological genius unexpectedly travels to the world of Hokage and becomes Hinata Hinata, the young lady of the Hinata family in the world of Hokage. So, a landscape appeared in the realm of ninja. A purple-haired beautiful girl, dressed in optical camouflage, sneaked into invisibility and lay on the mountaintop opposite Yunyin Village. She took out a portable NanoBarret M82A1 sniper rifle from the portable nanospace and aimed it towards the window of the Thundershadow office on the opposite mountain peak. A girl like this won't be likable. The strange sound behind her made her realize that she had been discovered, but strangely, a crazy smile appeared on her face. Forget it, if the assassination doesn't work, then let's force it. Call for air fire cover support. Call the portable mech legion. Keywords of the novel. Kiba. God of technology, Hinata Hinata no pop-ups, Kiba. God of technology, Hinata Hinata complete collection download TXT, Kiba. God of technology, Hinata Hinata latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Script opened. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Script opened, host name, %hashtag at hashtag Hinata Hinata, changed. Starting scanning, current world. Naruto world. Determined after data analysis and comparison. Host age. 6 years old. Brain wave lock. Enabled. After binding, the service can be activated. Current mode. Energy saving mode. Current battery level. 20%. My head was drowsy, and indeed, due to the habit of staying up late all year round, I stayed up late again last night. Hinata sat up and looked at the clean and simple room, lost in thought as she looked at the blanket covering her body and the floor underneath her. I'm 6 years old now from being attacked in a global experiment. The shock wave generated by the quantum explosion sent his brain waves to this world, coincidentally coinciding with the birth of Hinata Hinata. Next, for some unknown reason, it turned out to be the young lady of the Hinata family in the Naruto world. Hinata Hinata has been living in the Hinata family until now. Fortunately, I bring a portable technology terminal with me, which also has a database and battery to keep running, so I don't know nothing and live alone in this foreign world. Turning his head towards the table, he saw that the alarm clock above was almost ringing, and Hinata had to quickly get up. At April 1st, 10 in the morning, April 1st, 10. It has to be said that after the freshmen, their eyes are very functional, and they can see everything on the clock from a distance. Perhaps it is due to the bloodline of the Hinata family. Forget it, it's not important, ding-ling, click. The alarm just rang and was stopped by Hinata. Get up and push open the bamboo paper door. Outside, there is already a group of maids half kneeling on the porch waiting. They held a tray, on which were a white exercise suit and black exercise pants. There are also breakfast and toiletries, water buckets, towels, combs, a foldable small table, a wooden stool, and other items in hand. It has to be said that the treatment of the young lady is better. Okay, Hinata said calmly. Yes. As soon as she finished speaking, the maids got up and walked into the room, starting to serve her breakfast. Today's breakfast is a fish belly, fried and sprinkled with some green seasoning. There is also a bowl of miso soup and a stack of sweet potatoes. All of them are placed on small plates, which look exquisite and compact, but they just don't have enough to eat 3 times and 2 times. Under the supervision of the maids, try to maintain speed while not being too rough, otherwise someone will report and it will be disastrous. The Hinata family is more traditional, and the same goes for Hinata, who is the future heir of the family. The cultivation needs to be more serious and strict. After finishing the meal, I got up and went to the bathroom, where I started washing up with the help of the maids. Wow, wet the towel with cold water, then put it out and wring it dry, and the sound of water keeps going. The maid gently and decisively wiped her face as much as possible, repeated twice, then collected the towel and poured water into the sink, flowing down the drain. She also got up and left. Immediately after, the other maids also stood up and walked forward. The maid holding a water cup waited to brush her teeth, ensuring that they were clean. She even bent down to seriously stare at her white teeth. Hinata's face remained expressionless, but her heart was particularly complicated. I remember I had a long hand. Of course, I didn't dare to say anything, just silently waiting for everything to be completed. Because there are more important things ahead. Today is a weekly morning class, followed by a series of training courses prepared by Hinata's father, Hinata, after waking up in the morning and practicing at the dojo. However, due to the fact that he has traveled through time, the current Hinata only appears so weak on the outside, but he is very diligent in the cultivation training of the dojo and has a good sense of propriety in his sister's competition with Hinata fireworks. Except for her only archenemy, Hinata Nagatsuji, she can basically walk horizontally in Hinata's home. After making full efforts, Hinata finally understood that when chasing comics back then, it wasn't Hinata's lack of effort, but Hinata's talent was too terrifying. If it weren't for the breaking tradition of the Hinata family that buried the geniuses, it might be difficult to say who the head of the Hinata family is in the end. No wonder the Hinata family cannot compete with Uchiha. It's a pity, but for someone who has regenerated Hinata, this is the most profitable and beneficial situation. Alright, Lord Hinata. With the maid helping to change clothes, the loose pajamas on her body have now turned into a neat set of training clothes, with white training clothes on her upper body and black training pants on her lower body. Light purple short hair, practice clothes, petite and youthful body shape. In this lifetime, it seems like that's all. With a sigh, Hinata stood up and walked towards the outside. Hinata's home, the dojo, was illuminated by shining lights. It was not yet dawn, but the three people inside the dojo got up early. Wearing a robe, Hinata sat kneeling in the dojo with a straight waist and a solemn expression. And not far from him, Hinata and Hinata Ninji were also like this. Sitting opposite each other with serious expressions. Hinata Nishi looked at Hinata with hatred in his eyes. It was a member of the ancestral family who caused the death of their own father, but I am being controlled by the curse of the bird in the cage, this damn fate of the evil sect. At this moment, even though Hinata Ninshi was sitting still, his hands placed near his legs and knees clenched into fists, accelerating blood flow throughout his body, muscles tense, and his expression anxious and angry. This shows how excited he was at this moment. If it weren't for Hinata still here, he would have already flown up and started to fight. Today's morning class is still a practice session. Alright, let's start. Hinata said expressionlessly. Hinata stood up upon hearing the words, and so did Hinata Ninji. After getting up, the two of them distanced themselves and began bowing to each other. The battle is starting. At the next moment, with the announcement of Hinata Higashi, the battle between the two officially began. Soft fist. Hinata Ninshi was also decisive. Chakra gathered and exerted a little force on the wooden floor of the dojo. In the next second, his body was as fast as the wind, and he clapped towards Hinata with one hand. Rochuan focuses on physical attacks, and after attaching the chakra, it can achieve the effect of inserting the chakra into the opponent's body through special techniques, causing damage to the human meridians and blocking the chakra. Calculating current speed. Calculating current distance. Calculating the opponent's physical fitness. Calculating the other party's habits. Comparing host data. Please maintain a certain distance. Due to the influence of portable technology terminals, brainwaves are beginning to be influenced by the system interface. The opponent's speed, numerical interface, and their own numerical interface all entered the verification process in an instant. The illusion of the other person began to appear in front of me, as well as the light spectrum of my current position. In human terms, at this moment, Hinata has opened a script. The world she is currently in is filled with various details. Even a slight error of 1 centimeter will not occur, but data errors caused by differences in her physical fitness will still occur. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. The winner has already been decided. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. The winner has already been decided. Take a step back and feel the strong wind blowing from your fist against your face, as you step back one after another. Hinata Hinata widened his eyes, he didn't know when she dodged and left. From the perspective of her natural talent in cultivation and the process of combat alone, I am definitely not inferior to her. But every time we compete, there is a feeling of powerlessness, not a gap, but some kind of vague feeling. Hinata's eyes couldn't help but widen, and his face was a bit itchy. Even if he turned on the computing mode of the portable technology terminal, he couldn't avoid being so close to him. Sure enough, the cultivation of this body still needs to be further strengthened, otherwise it will be more difficult compared to this kind of genius. Ha! Over there, Hinata Hinata did not believe in evil and continued to relentlessly pursue an attack, as if launching an attack in a frenzy. He has been blinded by the anger, and his father's death was all caused by the family. All of them, Zong family. Ning Ci gritted his teeth, his fists tightened, and Chakra's movements became faster. The instinctive attack of his body is already enough to reach the pinnacle of his age, with no weak punches, and he can basically achieve precision by almost a centimeter every time. Hinata Hinata's body is incredibly agile, able to dodge his punches at critical moments every time, even if his talent and physical fitness are strong enough to even cause a slight deviation in the calculation of technology terminals. But as time passed, the gap grew bigger and bigger, to the extent that he felt powerless again. Hinata Hinata seems to be gradually getting used to his combat style. Even if he tries to modify his attack methods, Hinata Hinata will cleverly dodge, always feeling like he just dodges after touching his clothes, unable to hit anyone at all. Results obtained, optimization in progress. Optimization results have been obtained and are currently being changed. As the sound of the terminal continued to ring, along with the changes in the light spectrum of the image in front of her, there was also a lot of data added to her body. Ha! Hinata Hinata clenched his fist, and the extent of his arm bending was collected by the terminal and then preserved. The muscle details of his foot, including his gaze angle at this moment, the distance between the two, were also preserved. All data has been retained by the terminal and created into corresponding plans for defense. Hinata Hinata has become accustomed to this type of combat style. However, speaking of which, just now Hinata Hinata really hit her and she almost couldn't catch her breath. The difference between the two is very obvious. It's a pity that I wrote the script myself. Sorry, my data is above you. Hinata Hinata clenched his fist, recalling the first time he practiced in a dojo when he was 3 or 4 years old. This guy didn't hesitate to punch himself in the face, and then he rested at Hinata's house for a whole month. The body suddenly charged forward, and the chakra inside the body moved. Analyzing numerical values, analyzing the other person's physical fitness. Analyzing current distance, 3m 2m 1 meters. Approaching encounter, calculating the value after touch. As Hinata quickly approached and felt the data and calculation results transmitted from the system terminal panel, Hinata dodged the opponent's fist sideways. Still rubbing against my face, this time the error distance reached a few millimeters. Sure enough, the closer you get, the more you can feel the gap between yourself, the system, and Xiangning. However, to Hinata, the other party's hateful gaze was very unpleasant. The fist slowly charged towards the opponent's cheek. The positions between the two are gradually getting closer. Just as Hinata was about to hit her opponent's cheek with her fist, she suddenly felt a surge of vigilance. In an instant, she only felt goosebumps all over her body. Warning. Attacked. The verification result is unable to dodge. We are preparing the budget for receiving the results. The verification of the results has been completed and the data is currently being uploaded. The upload has been completed. With a series of data flowing through, Hinata Hinata's fist officially touched the opponent's cheek, and the feeling of flesh and blood contact came, giving a tangible feeling of strength being exerted. Then there was a sharp pain in the abdomen that occurred simultaneously. Bang! Puff! Puff! After a muffled sound, the two of them flew backwards towards each other at the same moment in the midst of lightning and fire. Like a rag pocket swaying in the wind, it finally fell to the ground with a muffled sound. If you look closely, Hinata's recovery was very successful. Even if it's impossible to avoid all the damage, she tried her best to perfectly avoid some of the avoidable damage. After uploading data from the portable technology terminal, she immediately made a response plan, with the highest priority being to punch Hinata ninja, followed by avoiding damage. At this moment, as both of them were knocked out and fell to the ground, with an unknown smell of blood or bitterness in their mouths, she wore a smile on her face. It's done. This is the first time I've hit this kid in the face while practicing in the morning at the dojo since I've traveled through time. In the past, although we were able to get on par with him, the final result was that none of them were beaten to death by him. Several times, we had to lie in the hospital bed, drink medicine, wrap ourselves in bandages, and live outside the window. Filled with satisfaction, Hinata took a deep breath and struggled to get up from the ground. Over there, Hinata ninja's face, which had fallen to the ground, was already covered in skin and drooling. Obviously, after hitting the chin, this kid fainted directly. Sure enough, to defeat a person, one must first understand their weaknesses. The database of the system terminal clearly achieves this, perfectly interpreting the term weakness. As long as he is still a human, it is basically impossible to avoid these weaknesses. On the other hand, there was a slight tingling in the fist due to this blow, probably a scratch on the skin, or maybe it's because of the impact. Forget it, it's not important. The outcome has already been decided. Here comes the person. Over there, Hinata and Hinata have also changed their previous cold and lifeless face. He saw it more vividly than anyone else, just how difficult this battle was for Hinata. Just the talent that made Hinata ninja feel ashamed when he saw it made him more worried. The Hinata family has always been quite decadent, and he knows this better than anyone else. It is precisely because of this that he becomes more aware, not only of his guilt towards Hinata ninja, but also of his clear understanding of his younger brother Hinata Hinata. Ning-Si's talent is definitely stronger than Hinata's. But Hinata explained to him very well what a fierce warrior fights a tiger. She surprisingly defeated Hinata ninja with her eerie body movements and judgment of battle. No matter how ugly the process may be, or even a bit awkward, several times her body movements were not too graceful, but after all, combat is a battle. If you want to look good, why not go and practice dancing specifically? Therefore, Hinata Hinata was even more surprised. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. This child, perhaps a genius in battle. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. This child may be a genius in battle. This child, perhaps a genius in battle. This idea couldn't help but emerge in Rizu's heart. Looking over there, Hinata Hinata, who was a bit stumbling, hunched over and standing in a strange posture, also had a hint of indulgence in her eyes. My own daughter is also very strong. Go down and rest. I won't practice for the time being today. The maids kneeling outside the door walked in one after another, starting to greet the two of them to get up and leave, and Rizu's tone became much gentler. On Hinata Hinata's side, under the guidance of the maid, she endured the excruciating pain in her abdomen and stood up to leave with them. At the same time, she also gained a clearer understanding of her own situation. If a big family wants to survive, they either have to be discarded as waste or strive to climb up. A mediocre life is clearly not one's own style, and living in a ninja world cannot really become a waste, can it? The feeling that my fate cannot be controlled by me is too uncomfortable. Her gaze became condensed, looking back on her past life. She had to humbly plead with others for things she couldn't do due to insufficient abilities. She never thought about the days when she didn't have any initiative. Hinata Hinata, we need to work hard. Even if it turns out like this, I still have to work hard. Hinata Hinata walked as she secretly swore to herself. On the one hand, as a time traveler, the world she originally lived in also had the Naruto anime. It was because of this that she realized that the crisis she was facing was not only the trial of the Hinata family, but also the tasks of ninjas and the ninja exam. Not to mention pain attacking Ninja Village, Infinite Moon reading controlling the ninja realm, and so on. Although it's a bit too early to talk about the Chinese ninja exam now, the thought of drawing lots for opponents in the exam can lead to a draw of Ri Xiangning. But now he has not yet had a 10 out of 10 chance to defeat him, and Hinata's heart is inexplicably flustered. You should know that as time goes on, the improvement of daily progress will definitely become terrifying, so what we need to do now is to improve ourselves a little more. Perhaps I need to work harder. The current cultivation is not enough, not at all. Motor. At noon, the scorching sun hung high, and Hinata was home. His arms and ankles were tied with a 100-pound iron ring wristband and leg guards engraved with rootedness. Hinata made a slight attempt and felt like he was pressing down on a mountain. At noon, facing the sun, even though my physical fitness had improved significantly due to the limitations of blood inheritance and the practice of physical skills throughout the year, I still felt the pressure doubled. Sure enough, I couldn't withstand this 100-pound iron ring. She couldn't even imagine how abnormally Locke would be in the future ninja exams, who could still walk briskly with a 1,000-pound iron ring on his body. Terminal, arrange training plan. Received instructions to start calculating data and searching for database search results. A series of messages spread out, the database was mobilized, and the portable system terminal calculator system continued to calculate, ultimately obtaining the result. The operation was successful and is currently being scheduled. The training plan is as follows. It is recommended to change the 100 kg iron ring to 10 kg iron ring. Reason. Adaptive training is most suitable for the current host value. Suggested training time. Change from no goals to train 1 hour a day. 7 days later, the adaptation training time will be increased by 1 hour, and combined with basic physical training, the adaptation training will be enhanced. Note. Chakra has a higher energy level and can be considered as a driving energy source for portable system terminals. A series of information was arranged, and after reviewing it, Hinata analyzed it a bit. That's right, this is indeed more efficient. The portable terminal is indeed straightforward. Although the logic of artificial intelligence needs to be improved, without human misconceptions, it is ultimately just a string of data, but Hinata still trusts it. After all, in the future, having one terminal per person is already common sense. Please help me prepare a 10-pound iron ring, sister. Hinata turned her head to look at the maid behind her. She couldn't even name the maid, as there were quite a few maids in the Hinata family. Yes, Mississippi. The maid immediately stood up and left to prepare what Hinata had requested. Recently, Lord Nishizu has given orders and Lord Hinata has performed very well. If you have any requirements, you can consider them at your discretion. Unless you need to report them to him for extreme reasons, you can meet them at your discretion. Now it seems that a 10-pound iron ring is not an excessive requirement. After all, it is a cultivation, but the young lady's hard work is really cute. If it weren't for her inappropriate status, the maid would have wanted to walk up and pinch her naturally plump, pink, and petite cheeks while she was pinned down by a 100-pound iron ring. And Hinata struggled a little to remove the 100-pound iron ring from her body. Boom! The iron ring fell to the ground with a loud noise, causing smoke and dust to spread everywhere. A large pit was immediately smashed into the ground. If there is enough power to throw this thing out, in a sense, it can also be considered a trump card. Hinata twitched at the corners of her mouth, with cold sweat sliding down her forehead. She looked at the potholes that had been smashed on the ground, and her eyes were full of complexity. After tidying up for a while, Hinata sat on a stool and looked at the artificial mountains and waters around her, feeling helpless in her heart. "Miss, what you want?" Soon, the maid Kwai came over with a tray in her hands. Although she seemed eager, she actually walked steadily. It has to be said that these women who work as maids in wealthy households also have some skills. At least Hinata can feel that even when facing enemy attacks at this moment, they can still achieve good coping skills. This is the elite 40 pounds of things were placed on her tray, and with her particularly fast movement, she couldn't see any panic in her breathing. "Thank you." Hinata approached her and, as she bent down, reached out to take off the wristband wrapped in a 10-pound iron ring from the tray. Her palm sank involuntarily, but it was still within her tolerance. Although wrapped in white cloth, she could still feel a bit cold. Wearing it on the wrist instantly feels like the arms are heavy, but it's much easier compared to a 100-pound iron ring, but it's a bit sluggish and not entirely tiring. Then there's the leg guard, which is also worn on the calf. Just like applying a immobilization technique, Hinata felt a bit numb all over. Able to move, but on the verge of death, sluggish to a certain extent. Even if the turtle is racing against itself now, I may not necessarily be able to run. Hinata's forehead was covered in cold sweat. Sure enough, the first step of training is still quite difficult. Starting countdown, please wait, the remaining duration of cultivation is 00.59.50. After finishing all of this, Hinata also began to adapt and began to exercise slowly. The range of movements doesn't need to be too large anyway, it's just adaptive training now. Back in the day, in order to pursue her beautiful younger sister, she even set up a gym membership. On the one hand, it was necessary to train because she had to spend years in the laboratory. On the other hand, as long as she could build a muscle, she would be more competitive even among boys. Although the competitiveness among boys is indeed unnecessary. Okay. Then let's start. Hinata has officially started her adaptive practice. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Cultivation of Clan Leaders. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Cultivation of Clan Leaders. A week later, there were still 3 people sitting upright in the dojo of Hinata's home. However, this time it's not about morning exercises, but about family training, so I called Hinata and Hinata over. Today, I would like you two to participate in the analysis of the affairs of the Hinata family and the Kiba family. Hinata also came straight to the point, except for some body art secrets that cannot be taught. As the guardian of Hinata's family division, Hinata is also qualified to be trained. And big families, such as Uchiha, Inzuka, Ono, Nara, etc., will cultivate their future descendants. In addition, some children are more intelligent from a young age, so they will teach them the way to view things and infuse their family or village ideas. So now Hinata Higashi is also going to start his teaching. Since the Nine Tails Rebellion, the strength of Ninmura has suffered greatly, and the business of the Hinata family has also been difficult to do. The finances of other families have also faced certain crises. After the Uchiha clan's extermination, the pressure on the Hinata family has become even greater. Hinata said it was to cultivate Hinata's embryonic fields, but it was more like complaining and complaining. Hinata was momentarily stunned at the words and began to think in her mind that the destruction of the Uchiha clan was due to their great threat to the village, and with someone pushing the situation forward, it became almost a foregone conclusion. After annihilating them, coupled with the attacks of the Nine Tails Rebellion and the outbreak of various disputes in the past, the entire village of Kiba has suffered a great loss of strength. The first ninja village in the past was at the forefront, but now it has suffered from both internal and external enemies and is now obedient. There have been too many experiences in this regard. The burden on Hinata is too heavy. If most people were ambitious, they would have already raised the flag of the Hinata family and bullied in Kiba village. However, he is worried that his ambition may bring disaster to the family, just like Uchiha. As members of a large family, they are aware of the massacre of Uchiha and the situation in my village. After all, they live here and occupy a certain position. Even if they don't know the whole picture, they can probably guess something. At that time, Yuzhibo did not appear in the Nine Tails Rebellion, and the village was already very divided when they used the Nine Tails' power to control the Nine Tails to launch an attack. Later, even Yuzhibo was relocated from the village and suppressed everywhere, almost leaving no way to survive. At that time, seizing power was their only solution, and at that time, the popular figure, Mai, was not worried about the impact of removing this cancer. Long pain was better than short pain, so he resolutely wiped them out for the benefit of the majority. All of this is done perfectly, but the survival of Uchiha Sasuke is a problem now. The original position of the Hinata clan is limited by the Uchiha clan, and the Sharingan of the Uchiha clan can be compared to the white eye of the Hinata clan, each with its own advantages. But now, without the restrictions of Uchiha, the position of the Hinata family is very unique, and the direction of a family has become particularly important. At this point, the leader's decision will naturally affect the changes and future of the entire family. This is an opportunity. Hinata just tentatively threw out this idea and concept. After hearing this, Hinata's face remained unchanged, but his hand in his sleeve couldn't help but tremble, even clenching into a fist. I cannot refute this statement. This idea is one of his two conflicting ideas in recent years. Tell me. Hinata looked at Hinata, waiting for her answer. Upon hearing this, Hinata frowned and hesitated for a moment, saying, "No, perhaps it would be better to be more stable. This would be beneficial for both the village and the family. Everyone should take a step back. In this way, life will be more stable." Her sudden change of voice completely blinded Rizu. What is she really thinking? This idea also fits his ideas quite well, and it occupies the most subjective consciousness. In recent years, what he has been fighting in his heart is not only the opportunity after Uchiha's extermination, but also his own cowardice and incompetence. He just hopes that the Hinata family can be more stable, and the lessons of Uchiha's past are still vivid in his mind. Perhaps I'm used to it. Since Hinata was almost taken away by the envoy of the Kingdom of Thunder, I was so angry that I chased after Hinata and took her back. However, the envoy of the Kingdom of Thunder committed suicide and framed her. After that, for the first time, Rizu realized what despair is. The pressure from the fire country in Kiba village, as well as the sense of responsibility and accountability towards his family, left him gasping for breath. It wasn't until my younger brother Hinata went out to suffer his own death that this matter was finally settled. Since then, he has been struggling and hesitating. Will his previous mistakes be repeated? He dare not. He doesn't have the courage. The atmosphere fell into a strange awkwardness, and Hinata and Nishinji didn't speak either. Carefully examining her daughter and looking back on all these years, Rizu suddenly realized that this seemingly inconspicuous little one had completely seen through himself. That's definitely not her idea, but Rizu can't say. Should she be happy or angry? Do you think so? Hinata stared earnestly at Hinata sitting in place. Hinata nodded innocently at the words, without saying a word. To be honest, if she comes, the Hinata family will be disrupted. The burden on the Hinata family is too heavy, they are just trying to survive, Hinata muttered to himself. Vaguely, Hinata saw a few white hairs on his head. Without continuing, Rizu just stood up and said, "It's almost over. Come with me in another month to carry out the task. I'll arrange it now." In recent years of cultivation, whether it is physical cultivation or ideological enlightenment, from confusion at the beginning to gradually analyzing and making judgments and decisions on certain matters of the Hinata family, Hinata has been wholeheartedly involved in it. It's just 1 or 2 years, but it's enough for Rizu to see clearly the intelligence level of their daughter. She is really smart. She can start thinking and analyzing from an adult's perspective from a young age. I remember the last time I saw such a child, it was still in the youth of the Uchiha clan. By the way, Uchiha Itachi has now become an S-level rebellious ninja and escaped from Kiba. As the head of the Hinata family, Hinata's judgment of this child is already very clear in his heart. Even Hinata Hinata, who had been worried about Hinata Ninja recently, successfully resolved it. In this way, there seems to be nothing to worry about anymore. All her strength and wisdom are complete, and the only thing left is to entrust her with the ninja mission. As long as she completes these tasks, she will have handed in all the things that Rizu can teach. He could see that this girl's thoughts were not that simple, and because she suddenly changed her tone, Rizu understood. She was even more shrewd than herself and knew how to protect her face. Alas, I don't know if I'm old. After raising my daughter, Rizu felt a sense of relief. The departing figure is filled with the meaning of dusk. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Instinct Enhancement. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Instinct Enhancement. Aren't you leaving yet? Hinata Ninja spoke, looking at Hinata Hinata sitting there, indifferent and puzzled. Come on. Hinata Hinata stood up and waved at him, starting to tidy up his clothes. After taking off his coat, the white training suit he was wearing inside also appeared in front of him. Bang dang. Along with the 10-pound iron ring on the wrists and ankles, it hit the wooden floor of the dojo with a clanging sound. Hinata Ninja's eyes showed a hint of shock, but he could also imagine that she must be wearing these and continuing to practice. She was so hard-working, what? Hinata Ninja looked puzzled, he didn't understand. What did she mean by saying this? Let's have a fight. I've improved my cultivation a bit and I can use 2 moves with you. Hinata Hinata started warming up, moving his muscles and bones, and said calmly without looking back, with no waves in his eyes. Hinata Ninja didn't know how to do it, and her face was full of complex expressions. After being defeated by Hinata last time, he has been reflecting on himself, and even for the whole week, he has been constantly thinking and accelerating the progress of his cultivation. Hinata just turned his head to look at him, didn't say much, and continued to warm up. Because he replaced Hinata Hinata's relationship as a traveler, Hinata's character in this life was even more distorted. Without the weak Hinata Hinata as an excuse, Hinata Ninja simply pushed all his life's hardships onto the Hinata family. The family of the sect killed the father of Hinata Nishimasa, and controlled him with the curse of a cage bird to become a servant of the sect. Hinata Ninja has tried to resist, but the result was unsatisfactory. He realized that he should be free, but the bird in the cage bound him to the side of the ancestral family. Even though his talent was much stronger than Hinata Hinata's, he could still only be regarded as a vassal. Hinata Ninja, who was tightly bound to Hinata's home, only felt torment, especially as he watched Hinata Hinata grow stronger day by day. He began to feel a little anxious. At this moment, he looked at Hinata Hinata, who was speaking lightly, but his heart was only filled with anger. Have a fight. Are you really treating yourself like a servant? That face of charity, disgusting. Hinata Ninja clenched her fist, her forehead covered in veins, her face flushed, and her eyes filled with a ferocious expression. Okay. Hinata Ninja agreed with a calm tone, but her anger gradually rose in her heart. This ferocious appearance made Hinata hesitate for a moment. Start computing. Hinata mobilized his consciousness in his mind and sent out fluctuations. Along with the fluctuations, the technology terminal also sent feedback that information data had started computing. As soon as one's mind moves, the system terminal automatically captures brainwaves and generates feedback, which is high.tech. Starting operation, after testing, there is a target database that can be called, and the operation data has been automatically loaded. The terminal automatically loaded the data collected from the last time, which was related to the daily routine. Starting operation. White-eyed. Hinata Hinata and Hinata Ninja both used their hands to seal their eyes and open them, with veins densely covering their temples and chakras filling their eyes. Data improvement detected, and the verification process is being anticipated. The activation of Bai Yen has improved the terminal's power consumption, and the terminal uses data to perform trajectory pre-calculation through comparison with Hinata's data. If she can see clearly, the system's calculation process will also change. The two of them stood in opposition in the dojo, and Hinata Ningji couldn't help but be eager to try. Hinata widened her eyes, feeling the changes in the world. When her white eyes opened, the whole world became gray and hazy, with nothing else except for Chakra's blue. After the iron ring receded, she only felt relaxed and very comfortable all over. During this week, she would tie a 10-pound iron ring to her hands and feet every day, and then practice for an hour. The battle is starting. Schwa. At the moment when Hinata finished speaking, Ninji's figure came to her eyes. She slowly lowered her palm with one hand, and after opening her eyes, Hinata could even see the condensed chakra on the other's palm. If you get hit, it will definitely not feel good. Hinata had already anticipated that while he was practicing, he had no reason to give up. Therefore, as he grew stronger, he was also constantly growing stronger. Reborn to become a young lady in the Hinata family, everything is going smoothly. With just a little effort, the future path of sunshine can be paved. She only needs to step up step by step to ascend directly to the sky. As for leaving Kiba, she never thought that once she left, she would basically be considered as rebellious. In this world, there are only two paths. Either become a ninja, or flee with your head in your arms. She doesn't want to rush around, and doesn't want her life to be controlled by others, making arbitrary choices and adjustments. So currently at Hinata's home, her only goal is to defeat Hinata Ningxi. Keep growing stronger and becoming a true ninja. Take control of your own destiny. The target action rules have been budgeted in advance, but the data has changed. We are currently reacquiring the data and starting the calculation process. 5:43 when the information sounded, Hinata realized that she could only rely on herself before the data appeared. Due to the data deterioration caused by the opponent's attack, it affected the system's operations, and as expected, Hinata Nagatsuji is also constantly becoming stronger. Drink it. At the same time, on the side of Rishiang Ningxi, his body is agile, his moves are concise and sophisticated, his attacks are ruthless, and every move is filled with determination and decisiveness. With just one punch and one kick, everything seemed natural, leaving little room for Hinata to dodge, and it could even be said that there was almost no room. Hinata hurriedly set off to dodge his attack, and it was almost with great strength that she managed to dodge the blow. The current Hinata is completely relying on its physical fitness to compete with Hinata Nishimasa. Bang! Ning Ci punched again, and Hinata also reached out his arm to block Hinata's second attack at the critical moment. Hinata couldn't help but take a cold breath, his eyes full of solemnity, and there was indeed a big gap between the two. Ning Ci punched his arm and a tingling sensation hit him. As a genius, Hinata Nishi's talent can be said to be one of the best in the contemporary Hinata family. But the corrupt rules of the Hinata family and the rules of the ancestral family buried geniuses, and in the original work, Hinata Ningxi did not even receive the training that geniuses should have when he died. Is this kind of rule good or bad? Hinata Ningxi frowned, his heart full of solemnity. Compared to before, he left some room for maneuver because the feeling Hinata had shown earlier made him realize that he could easily lose his rhythm. The rhythm of the battle is very important, especially if the strength difference between the two is not very huge. Once the rhythm of the strong is lost, even the weak have a chance to win. The feeling of falling into the mud made Ning Ci realize that she needed to be careful this time. It seemed that as long as she made good use of the gap between the two, she would not be able to catch up with it. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Fight with all your might. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Fight with all your might. However, the battle had been going on for quite some time, but Ning Ci did not feel any stagnation. This means the rhythm of the battle is almost entirely on my side. Hinata was ecstatic. Schwa. The next second, the fist he swung suddenly suffocated, the target in front of him was lost, and the feeling of powerlessness suddenly struck again. Hinata just took a step back, feeling the illusion that he could never catch up with her again. The operation is restarting, please wait. At the same time, Hinata suddenly froze on her side. The terminal's computation repair had not yet been restored, and she instinctively dodged for a moment. This is the first time in recent years. Wait, if you say that, even if the terminal is gone, you can still rely on your own abilities to fight on. Hinata's eyes also flickered with joy. Obtain operational data. Operation recovery in progress, calculating target distance and comparing data. In target habit prediction, comprehensive comparison and collection of target data in progress, the next second, the system terminal operation has been completely restored. As Hinata's gray world in front of her added many light spectra, circles suddenly appeared. She shook her slightly numb arm and looked at Hinata Ninji with a smile on her face. Enough fighting, right? It's my turn now. Hinata Ninji's heart tightened, his eyes widened, and he instinctively swung a punch, but at the moment he punched, he regretted it a bit. The feeling of stagnation once again enveloped him, and he only felt his chest starting to feel stuffy, feeling a bit breathless. Subconsciously, he swung a fist towards him. It's too late. Hinata said, her line of sight only had a spectrum of ghostly shadows, a humanoid spectrum of ghostly shadows, with its movements maintaining a fist-like posture. And at the moment it appeared, Hinata Ninji was just about to punch, but she had already begun to dodge that punch. After a momentary interval, Hinata Ninji repeated the action of the void shadow spectra just now, perfectly maintaining the posture of punching and reaching the designated position, overlapping directly with the spectrum. The movements between the two are exactly the same. Upon seeing this, a smile appeared on Hinata's face. With the help of the terminal, she can budget the other party's actions 1 second in advance, even if there is a slight error, it doesn't matter. As long as she can avoid it in advance, the other party will have no way to deal with her. This is how Hinata Ninji is now. The gap between the two is gradually narrowing. What exactly did you do? Hinata Ninji punched again, but was dodged by Hinata in advance, as if the two were acting. They agreed in advance and reacted in advance, just like a script. Hinata Ninji couldn't help but roar and look at Hinata over there. He can't help it anymore. He doesn't understand why. Why is it that every time she punches, it seems like she sees through it in advance? Is it the white eye of the ancestral family? No, it's impossible. I've never heard of such a thing before. Or is she playing with herself? What exactly is it? Hinata Ninji gradually went crazy, his eyes starting to turn slightly red, and he didn't even realize that there was a slight increase in chakra infused into the veins of his eyes, causing his eyeballs to start to become congested. Just as usual, Hinata remained expressionless, but in fact her breathing had begun to intensify. To be honest, Hinata Nishi is really terrifying and truly a genius. Even though Hinata has been working hard to practice soft fist in recent years, her body has adapted to various moves of this technique and has undergone advanced training. But she still couldn't achieve such natural perfection as Ning Ci. Sometimes she even has the illusion that soft fist was born for this guy. Are you playing with me? Ning Ci suddenly clenched his fist, gritted his teeth, and his chakra was reassigned throughout his body, muttering to himself with a crazy expression. What are you talking about? Hinata heard Hinata Ninji muttering and staying in place, looking at him with some confusion and asking questions. But in the next second, when the shadow of 180 fists appeared in front of her, she realized that something big was coming. Countless projections emerged in a series of forms, with only one order in order, as if someone was carrying a bucket and suddenly came up to spill out everything inside. Hinata Nishimoto has punched again. And this time it was a series of hysterical punches hitting me. Hinata no longer dared to speak with ease and elegance, and she also realized at this moment that Hinata Ninji's situation was very different. The boy's already extreme personality and environment have made him particularly twisted. Now, despite numerous setbacks, Ning Ci probably has reached the limit. And for those who reach their limits, there is usually only one outcome, which is to explode. Damn it. Looking at the sky full of fist shadows in front of him, Hinata now only had one feeling, which was that while playing music games, he suddenly encountered a large, extremely difficult and rapid scale, which instantly caught people off guard. But now, unlike audio games, just a touch will cause an avalanche-like chain reaction in the future. If hit by this large fist shadow, I'm afraid I'll be seriously injured. I guess I'll have to lie in the hospital for a few more months. As for being killed by Hinata Ningsi, Hinata predicted that he wouldn't dare. At most, he suffered a little hardship, and then he beat him up and lay in bed for a few months, taking soup and medicine to heal his wounds. And this kind of thing cannot happen, and Hinata doesn't want it to happen either, so the problem now is how to avoid these attacks. The operation has started and the route is being optimized. Sound appears in the brain, and the spectrum of light in front of us begins to change. Hinata almost adapted to this feeling, stood up very naturally, and began to dodge. The strong wind slowly hit, and the body quickly dodged. This side dodged, and the next second the terminal had already budgeted for the action feedback to appear directly. Hinata Ningsi's figure was like a shadow, perfectly fitting the order of the light spectrum, creating a perfect 1.2.1 replica. Hinata's eyes widened, his body tightened, and the opponent's power point and speed, as well as his own safety space, were clearly marked by the terminal. In addition, with the bonus of white eyes, even if Ning Ci also has white eyes, he cannot temporarily modify his actions without being predicted for a long time. So from the beginning, all the battle rhythms collapsed, but he didn't know it himself, which was equivalent to being actively led by the nose. On Hinata's side, she can only try to keep her figure as simple as possible, and step out with the smallest amplitude and pace to reduce her anticipation of the next move. Retreat, curl up, tilt your head, everything arrived as promised. Hinata Ninji's attack was disorganized, and the combat method was extremely rough, just a simple attack, trying to defeat Hinata, that's all. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Exhaustion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Exhaustion. When Hinata dodged Hinata's punch again that day, she suddenly remembered. Fighting is not only about defense and evasion, but also about attack. The current situation is that Hinata knows in advance the attack trajectory of Hinata Natsuki. After anticipating his attack trajectory and dodging, she can wait for the next move to come. And there is a time difference between this process. For example, if Hinata knew in advance the number of attack routes of Hinata Ningsi, she would definitely have sensed it 1 second in advance. If Hinata wants to dodge, due to the difference in strength, she will have 0.5 seconds to react and dodge the opponent's attack in advance. As long as she dodges the first move, the remaining attacks are completely widened, and she can know in advance, so dodging is effortless. But there is a problem. If she keeps dodging, evading, and letting the opponent attack, she will be at a disadvantage in the battle, and she essentially controls the rhythm of the battle, so she should be at an advantage. But evading and dodging everywhere always puts her at a disadvantage, so she lacks a necessary condition to establish an advantage. That's the attack. As I mentioned earlier, she knew in advance about the opponent's attack and then dodged, which had a time difference, and the opponent's behavior trajectory had already been predetermined. The next step was just to wait in advance. After she dodges, the remaining 0.5 seconds can actually be used to launch an attack and completely establish an advantage. After thinking about this clearly, Hinata Hinata smiled happily and thrust his fingers like sword fingers, aiming towards Hinata Nishimasa's imaginary arm position. What? Hinata Ningxi widened his eyes directly on his side. He had a feeling of being covered in mud since just now, so every time he punched, there was always a feeling of being rejuvenated, always slow, always feeling like he was being seen through. Even now he had this feeling, so when he saw Hinata punching her with a soft fist towards his attacking trajectory, he found himself as if he had been knocking on her door, and he had actually hit her directly. It's like sending her to the door to fight. This sudden change made him unable to react, and for a moment he couldn't even understand why she could do such a thing. What method did she use? Click. Hiss. The next second, in the midst of lightning and fire, Hinata Ningji's arm were hit, and he suddenly felt that his mind had cleared up a lot. He couldn't stay here now, he had to distance himself from her. Hinata Ninji stood up and dodged Hinata's next palm, then quickly stepped back several steps, trying to pull her back from Hinata. At this moment, a tingling sensation filled his wrist, causing him to temporarily lose consciousness. He shrugged and pulled like this, and soon after the tingling sensation subsided, a piercing sensation spread. Chakra, who had been thrusting his soft fist into his body, was destroying his cells and meridians. Her figure was widening, and a small part of the distance had already been thrown away. Hinata Ningji was overjoyed in her heart. But the next second, Hinata over there moved extremely quickly in sync with herself. And she's still preparing to launch an attack. All of this, as if she knew in advance that she would make such a reaction. Moreover, Hinata Ningxi was able to realize that her physical fitness could not keep up with her reaction in the first place. So essentially, she was a bit faster than herself, but her body couldn't keep up, which led to the illusion of synchronization at present. Successfully budgeted for the opponent's muscle response. The database is currently undergoing calculations. On Hinata's side, she was ecstatic and discovered a new use of the system. She couldn't be too happy. The trajectory of the other party is not immutable, but rather something that needs to be done by oneself, causing the other party's changes and naturally cancelling the trajectory. Fighting has never been static. On the contrary, the battle is changing rapidly, and I have just taken the first step, from a mobile wooden dummy to a mobile and rebellious wooden dummy. All the trajectories of Hinata Ninji are under my control. Here. Hinata slapped again, and as she had been waiting in place for a long time, she directly moved towards the next position where Hinata Ningxi retreated. Ningxi felt angry in his heart, but had to get up and dodge. At the same time, his body instinctively launched an attack. Indeed, she can predict her own behavior trajectory, but the gap in strength between the two cannot be easily bridged. Damn it! On this side, the phantom in front of Hinata suddenly changed. According to the terminal's display, if he forcefully wanted to strike Hinata Nishimasa, he would definitely be hit by Hinata Nishimasa's attack as well. Even if she waited for him in advance, she couldn't avoid the gap in strength. Hinata sighed in her heart and a bitter smile appeared on her face. The other party is slowly making up for all of this through the gap in talent and strength. Hinata quickly withdrew his fist and gave up the attack directly before Hinata Ninji punched. Here we go again. Just as Ri Xiangning's mind was once again filled with madness and anger, he found himself unable to control his body. The strength of this punch cannot be withdrawn, the opponent has abandoned the attack, and they have lost their target. The only thing they can do is launch an attack. He felt as if he was being played with by her between his thighs, controlled by her invisible ropes, like a puppet being manipulated. Every time I want to attack, I feel a sense of powerlessness and my fists become soft and fluffy. I can't reach her anymore. The girl who started being punched and flew by herself before, then got up after a few days of rest and was beaten and flew by herself, has now grown to this extent. Perhaps she is the genius. Hinata Ninji mechanically swung his fists, while Hinata deftly dodged. After a series of attacks, Hinata Ninja only felt a sense of powerlessness, which was divided into two parts: psychological and physiological. He had previously launched a series of reckless attacks without any gain, and his strength had been exhausted. Coupled with the stagnant feeling in the current battle, his heart was filled with restlessness. Anyway, it just can't be hit, as if she's been playing with it. Angry to death. Hinata Ninja feels very irritable. Give another punch, then step back. Hinata still skillfully bullied Hinata and rushed towards this side to try to launch an attack. Taking a deep breath, it was at this moment that Hinata Ninja realized that she was also exhausted, because she had swung her fist too many times. Or is it because this way of fighting makes him physically and mentally exhausted? Perhaps all of it. I'm so tired, I can't stand anymore. It's dark in front of me. This is the last thought in Hinata Ninja's heart before he fell into a coma. Hinata continued to punch in an orderly manner, and as the situation changed, the more battles they fought, the more enthusiastic they became. The Hinata Ninja over there can no longer stand, even though he is still dodging, his speed is getting slower and slower. Even if he is ruthless, he is just a child. After such a chaotic fight, his physical exertion is too intense. At this moment, he has already reached the end of his strength. Compared to this, Hinata himself is not feeling well either. The lungs feel as if they are burning, and every breath feels a tingling sensation, even with some dryness of the mouth and tongue. Standing still, one can feel the whole body trembling uncontrollably. I'm about to lose my strength. I guess he will still lose, right? Hinata let out a bitter smile and shrugged helplessly. Her legs softened, and now she has completely lost her strength. She also didn't see the information transmitted by the terminal, and didn't even realize that Hinata Ninja had stopped attacking. Puff. After a muffled sound, Hinata Ninja fainted on the ground first and then passed out with her head on the ground. Of course, Hinata didn't please either. He just lay flat and collapsed on the ground, looking at the ceiling with blurred eyes. Finally, it's over. I believe that with just a little more time, I can crush this kid myself. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Enabling hosting. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Enabling hosting. A week later, in the morning, Hinata was at home in the courtyard. Hinata, dressed in a thick training suit, stood barefoot in the yard, stepping on small stones, and practicing with a 10-pound iron ring on her wrists and ankles. As she swung her fists and feet, every move of the soft fist was particularly serious. A week ago, I competed with Hinata Ninja again, and then rested in bed for a while. Although I was not hit, the feeling of muscle strain and soreness has persisted until now. So now it's more like rehabilitation exercise than morning exercise. Excuse me. Excuse me. Master Rizu. Master Rizu. The big deal is not good. Suddenly, a chaotic sound began to stir up, accompanied by a group of figures in ninja uniforms hurriedly carrying a stretcher covered in blood on the porch, rushing past. What's going on? Hurry up. Take him to the dojo. On the other side, Hinata, who had heard the noise and stood up to check, initially inquired in confusion. However, when he saw the weakened and bloody figure on the stretcher, he quickly walked ahead and headed towards the direction of the dojo. Yes. Master Rizu. The group arrived in a hurry and hurried away. Hinata squinted and carefully examined Hinata, her eyes full of curiosity. Go take a look. Hinata suddenly stood up, put down the 10-pound iron ring on her hands and feet, and got up to rush towards that side. There is a large number of people in the Hinata family road field. The medical ninja of the Hinata family, Hinata-chin, has been called over and is currently squatting in front of the injured person to check his condition. Master Rizu, he may not be able to cure him. I don't have the ability to do so. For a long time, Hinata-sei looked up at Hinata standing there, feeling very heavy. Although it is normal to encounter failures and injuries during mission execution, when it comes to news of a friend being seriously injured or even dying, everyone feels heavy-hearted. Suddenly, the injured person trembled and extended his hand towards Hinata, as if wanting to say something to him. His breath was weak, his mental energy was insufficient, and his face turned pale. Hinata saw the situation and quickly got up to squat in front of him, leaning forward. Jitsuan Tuanzang. The person trembled and whispered the name of Jitsuan Tuanzang in a voice that only the two of them could hear. Hinata's eyes widened upon hearing this, filled with solemnity. Although I had anticipated it in my heart, I couldn't help but feel a bit incredulous when I heard this now. Is it because of something recent? A few days ago, when Ri Xiangqing returned, he reported an interesting news that Tuanzang may not be clean. I just didn't expect what happened a few days ago to happen today. A group of people present fell into silence. Can I help? Suddenly, a voice sounded, accompanied by the figure of Hinata appearing at the entrance of the dojo. All the ninjas present at the Hinata family couldn't help but turn their heads and look in the direction she was in, causing their hearts to sink again. Lord Hinata, it is indeed too simple. Unfortunately, it's not something that can be easily helped now. Hinata's injury at the funeral is too severe, and even a legitimate medical ninja cannot repair it. What can she do? I may have a way to save him, Hinata suddenly said. The smile on his face, along with the occasional agility in his eyes, and the absence of any jokes, made people feel a sense of shock. Is this something worth celebrating? But she doesn't seem to be joking anymore. Hinata's face was icy cold, and he calmly said to Hinata, step back. I said, I have a way to save him. Hinata was not worried, and if she spoke louder than her voice, she would do the same. Detected executable medical plan, predicted to take 1 week to recover 70%. The information about the terminal appeared in front of us, and the information about the treatment plan was written very clearly. The amount of medication used, the techniques and methods needed, and the handling and response methods in case of emergencies were all recorded very clearly. The dojo crowd fell into silence, and Hinata's face was even more gloomy. On the one hand, it was because Hinata, the head of the Hinata family, had an affair with him, and on the other hand, Hinata dared to confront him. Although Hinata has performed very well recently, even far exceeding his expectations, this is not her basis for resisting herself. But what if she can really save him? If possible, Hinata doesn't want Hinata to be buried. You can give it a try. Rizu's tone softened slightly. Just as all the members of the Hinata clan present breathed a sigh of relief, Hinata remained silent. The matter has been settled, and the death of Hinata's funeral has been confirmed. Even the experienced medical ninja Ri Xiangqing couldn't cure him, let alone her little girl in the movie. Upon hearing his words, Hinata breathed a sigh of relief and quickly walked forward. Data change, currently adjusting medical plan. Treatment can start now. Do you want to proceed? Squatting down to check the opponent's injuries, the plan became more optimized after the data was slightly updated. Hinata frowned and muttered in a low voice, he has lost too much blood. Although the blood has stopped, the internal injuries are still very serious. The difficulty of surgery is high, and various complications are prone to occur. If he continues like this, he can only last for at most an hour. As these words came out, the atmosphere inside the dojo became even more desolate, and Hinata looked at Hinata in surprise. Although he probably had some points in his heart, he dared not announce such news so coldly. Also, her judgment is so accurate. Even as a medical ninja, I have only recently made this decision. So he realized that he could never cure Hinata burials. Even if he opens his eyes, he cannot receive treatment, and what lies before him is a huge problem. He can't do it. What about Hinata? She came here only a few minutes before and after, and could quickly deduce so much accurate information. Sorry, could you please tell me, if it's convenient, how the chakra surgical knife is made. Hinata suddenly scratched her head and looked at Hinata again with an embarrassed expression, smiling twice. Hinata Qingling hesitated for a moment, then looked at Hinata Hinata and stuttered, "I know exactly what constitutes it, but I don't know either. If we want to have surgery, we'll have to invite someone else. By the way, I have a medical book with me." Suddenly, he took a hanging book from his waist and handed it over. Hinata hesitated for a moment and then took it from his hand. Scanning in progress, database update, verifying. Verification successful, successfully converted, can start hosting mode. The success rate of plan execution is 100%. Do you want to enable hosting? Yes. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Successful surgery. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Successful surgery. Hinata Hinata had only been playing for a while, and all he felt was regret and absurdity. Why did he let a little brat come in and cause trouble in such a serious situation? The members of the Hinata family present were all silent, their eyes filled with bitterness as they looked at Hinata Hinata. They can understand Lord Hinata's original intention of wanting to help, but they all just think she's just a child playing house, and what can she do if she can't even do something to Xiang Qing every day? That's why everyone's silence made Hinata feel ashamed and embarrassed. Hinata Hinata is sensible, and it is true that other people are also sensible. However, as the head of his own family, he has made wrong decisions time and time again, but he dared not call a stop and could only let this farce continue. This is Lord Hinata. She just went straight. Suddenly, a cry of surprise came, accompanied by the people of the Hinata tribe around them staring at each other, as if they had seen a ghost. Hinata Hinata couldn't help but curiously looked towards that side. Then he saw the ice blue chakra surgical knife that Hinata Hinata had lit up. Surprisingly, now even Hinata Hinata has seen a ghost on his own. The chakra surgical knife for medical ninjas requires precise control of the chakra to achieve it, and most ninjas do not have such talent. Even some veteran medical ninjas cannot achieve this type of ninjutsu. After all, it is an A-level ninjutsu that only a very small number of people know. Although it is written in textbooks at best, that thing is just a big cake, painted for people to see. But now, Hinata Hinata has actually achieved it. Lord Hinata, you really have hidden a good hand. The other members of the Hinata family looked at Hinata Hinata like ghosts, their eyes full of joy. They now only believe that Hinata Hinata's training is in place, to the extent that they have cultivated top talents like Hinata Hinata, and even learned A-level ninjutsu like chakra surgical knife at a young age. Hinata Hinata didn't speak, just remained expressionless and remained calm with a very guilty heart. This became even more mysterious to the other members of the Hinata family. I truly deserve to be the head of the family. It turns out that there was already a way to remain so calm. As for the seriousness that Hinata and Hinata have shown before, no one cares. As for the current Hinata Hinata, she didn't feel much, like a robot that had been deprived of mobility and only had its senses running. After entering the custody mode, she is now fully and wholeheartedly under the control of the terminal, with all decisions and actions being managed by the terminal. The chakra inside her body is automatically activated, and the terminal is controlling her body to proceed with the surgical plan. Even the surgical knife was learned through scanning that book. The terminal now has a thorough understanding of chakra. This is a bioenergy source that originates from the human body, and according to the world, it is extracted from the cells inside the human body. After various analyses using modern medicine, the data is finally broken down and its composition is analyzed clearly. After being influenced by it, some data is naturally retained in the database. The evolution of chakra has also become particularly simple. Hinata Qing widened his eyes. He thought she was just casually saying something, and then handed the book to her with a childlike attitude, but who knew that she had learned A-level ninjutsu and chakra surgical knife. Even planning to undergo surgery now. You should know that the difficulty of performing surgery is not just about simply removing something, but also about cutting open the obstructed parts and then going to the affected area to use the cactus technique for treatment. Many medicinal liquids have been placed in place now, and some medical conditions are available. Unfortunately, he does not know how to use a chakra surgical knife. Currently, there are very few such talents in the entire village of Mai. That's why he gave up treatment, and even if he opened his eyes, the presence of chakra in his body would become a key obstacle to the surgery. All of this combined, it's as difficult as heaven. However, the young lady unexpectedly looked towards Hinata Hinata, who had no expression on her face. Under the control of the terminal, her movements are clean and agile, and her power is mobilized as much as the system budget, with little or no effort. Cut open the obstructed area, penetrate deep into it, and start internal hemostasis after reaching the designated location. Use the simplest cactus technique again, use chakra to assist in treatment, and freely adjust the medication. The action was crisp and agile, and the originally delicate and careful surgical process was completed in her hands with just a little effort. Hinata Funeral gritted his teeth like this, even without anesthesia, he endured it, trembling even in pain, but he still didn't say a word. Oh my goodness! In my lifetime, that Hinata Ching was surrounded by her, muttering softly as little as possible without affecting Hinata, her eyes full of small stars. He felt for the first time that there was such a huge gap between people, as he was already in his 30s. Hinata Hinata, at his current age, is already able to perform surgery. Even though Hinata Ayasu has a body technique like Rochuan, which can accurately control chakra in his hands, he cannot guarantee that he can be as calm and composed as she is. I had never seen Hinata perform any surgery before, but now that I see her experienced appearance, Hinata Ching even suspects that Hinata has undergone many surgeries. Her movements were crisp and agile, and even if he hadn't personally performed the surgery, he could have realized how much difference there was between the other person's medical strength and his own strength. Hinata Hinata is the sky. And he may just be a small stone underground. Predicting possible complications and preventing them in advance. Hinata Hinata's eyes flickered with various light spectra, and she couldn't help but be surprised. If she had come, she might not have been able to perform these complex operations. The execution of various light spectra, even with a deviation of 1 mm, is enough to cause headaches. Not to mention how difficult it is for Hinata to see a series of data and sudden changes in actions after each execution. It can be called a hellish level difficulty. Hinata Hinata was just silent, he didn't dare to speak. He was tired of the envious gaze of the people around him, so there was no need to explain more. He didn't want to say anything more. He was curious about the sudden emergence of these methods by Hinata Hinata. Because he has never taught her these things, but she has learned them. Perhaps she has been really working hard lately. The bleeding rate decreased, no complications were detected, and vital signs were normal. Attention! If there is insufficient power, the terminal will automatically enter power.saving mode and temporarily unable to provide some services. The following methods can be used to charge terminals. Making generators, power infusion, resource consumption, natural energy, etc. As the data finally appeared and the terminal interrupted communication, Hinata also breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the power was cut off after the surgery was over, otherwise I really wouldn't have thought about what would happen next. But next, perhaps we need to think about what to do to get the terminal back up and running. Alright, he's fine. He may need a good rest for a while now, Hinata Hinata said calmly. Hinata Ching over there also quickly regained consciousness and leaned forward to squat down to examine Hinata's burial injuries. As expected, his current state has stabilized a lot, his breath has also stabilized a lot, but he is relatively weak. There is also a pool of blood on the dojo, which looks dirty. Next, let's leave it to Mr. Ching for you to handle. Hinata chose to hand it over to Hinata Ching. Okay, Mississippi. Hinata quickly came forward to take over the matter. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Developing Technology. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Developing Technology. His injury has stabilized, the rest can be handed over to me. Thank you, Lord Hinata. Hinata bowed seriously to Hinata Hinata after examining his burial injury, his face full of gratitude and a loud voice. Friends are recovering and don't have to die anymore. They can't say how happy they are. Hinata nodded indifferently upon hearing this. What she was more concerned about now was the issue of terminal power outages. This also made her realize that she may need to start paying attention to technological progress. If there was a robot hospital just now, you just need to put it into the mechanical compartment, and then it can automatically perform surgery and treatment without the need to do it yourself. The level of technology in this world is really unbearable to look directly at. Hinata, come over here for a moment. I have something to tell you. Hinata Hinata couldn't resist his doubts and stood up to walk outside the dojo. Well, Hinata glanced at him upon hearing this, her thoughts disrupted, but she did not refuse the invitation from the Japanese football team. She stood up and followed his footsteps towards the outside. In the courtyard of Hinata's home, Hinata Hinata looked seriously at Hinata Hinata. And Hinata Hinata also waited in place, waiting for his possible next lecture. But as the two stood still for a while, Hinata caught sight of Hinata's awkward expression. I have heard about your defeat of Ningxi, and the medical ninjutsu you used during your funeral just now, said Hinata Hinata expressionlessly. Upon hearing his admonition, Hinata hesitated for a moment, wondering if she was going to expose herself. Is the fact of being a traveler about to be exposed? Or is it to say that just as Hinata Hinata was still very nervous, Hinata changed his serious attitude and gently reached out his hand to rub her head, saying, You worked hard, Hinata sauce. I'm proud of you. Hinata froze for a moment, blinked and frowned. Perhaps in this world, even if a 5-year-old child learns A-level ninjutsu and can perform tasks, it's not surprising, is it? After all, the chakra weight inside the Ming human body is too large, and A-level forbidden multiple shadow clones are not necessarily praised for their appearance from the perspective of being a normal person. This world is extraordinary after all, and things like chakra and ninjutsu can no longer be explained by the ordinary world. Sure enough, the villagers really know how to play. Hinata Hinata let out a sigh in her heart. But since he attributes all of this to his own hard work, let's take it for granted the Hinata family has nurtured geniuses, which is commendable. Hinata Hinata even began to ponder whether the things he had displayed were too conservative. Perhaps it would be better to be bolder yourself. By the way, if you have anything you want, you can tell me, said Hinata Hinata with a slightly awkward expression on her face. He even awkwardly reached out his hand to scratch his nose, perhaps showing his fatherly demeanor was not very skilled for him, so now it looks very awkward. He, who has always been rigid, rarely shows such an expression. Today, Hinata Hinata was particularly pleased to be able to save Hinata Aoki. As Hinata had imagined, her talent was surprising enough to many, and indeed extraordinary, but still within a range that was acceptable. Japanese football is understandable. Back in the day, various geniuses emerged one after another, graduating at the age of a few to carry out missions in the dark, and starting to handle various national affairs on behalf of daimyos at the age of a few. He has also seen many children. Hinata's excellence only made him feel gratified. He couldn't imagine how hard Hinata had been practicing and working in the dark. Perhaps showing a gentle side was the only thing he could do so far. Really? Hinata Hinata also snapped out of her surprise and looked at Hinata Hinata in surprise. Hinata Hinata was taken aback by the words and thought to himself, did he really treat her too harshly? The thought flashed through her heart, and Hinata Hinata became even more determined. She quickly nodded and said, that's right. I will agree to your request, but on the other hand, you need to work harder in the future. Everything is for her good, for her future. I've always wanted something. Can you buy it for me? Hinata Hinata didn't care too much, just quickly spoke up and stared at Hinata Hinata with pitiful big eyes. Hinata Hinata couldn't help but soften her heart when she saw her adorable appearance. After all, this is my own daughter, okay? Go now. Hinata Hinata was also very decisive, making a big move and about to get up. Hinata Hinata was also full of enthusiasm. She didn't care what Hinata Hinata said to work harder. She had already figured it out. Since she wasn't performing well enough, she should show enough to reflect her own value. The enthusiasm for machinery and the love for circuit boards have been reactivated. As a mechanical enthusiast in her past life, she even participated in world-class scientific research projects. Coincidentally, there is a power outage at the terminal. If you're not dozing off, why don't you come to the pillow? Nissan may not know how terrifying this decision will have a huge impact on the ninja world. My village is a commercial street with people coming and going. Even if Mai is just a ninja village, the number of residents living here is equivalent to that of a town. Master Rizu. Master Rizu. Walking among them, both the ninjas and the villagers greeted Hinata and Hinata, nodding and bowing in an imposing manner. However, Hinata suffered a lot. He had originally thought that whatever he said today, he would have both grace and authority, so that Hinata Hinata could experience the dignity of a father. But who knew, Hinata Hinata taught him a lesson first. Generally, if girls from other families get this opportunity, they either go to dessert shops, buy some souvenirs, or simply go to street vendors to play various games and catch goldfish. But Hinata was so good that he went everywhere to those hardware and weapon stores. He bought a lot of various weapons and even spent money on materials that he couldn't even name, and even some things for decoration. He knows wire ropes, and they are very useful for making traps and executing tasks, but he just can't figure out why she bought these things for. Bring back the sweet memories of father and daughter, you bastard. Hinata feels like crying without tears, but compared to the fantasies in her mind, Hinata Hinata appears more hardcore. If it weren't for the genuine and adorable smile on her face after buying the gift, and her serious expression on her face, Rizu might have turned around and left. But for the sake of my daughter's smile, it's worth it. Carrying big and small bags, Hinata was full of enthusiasm, but she had bought almost everything she needed, so she didn't know what to do next. Let's go eat together, Hinata Yoshitaka, Hinata said with a smile. Seeing her bewildered appearance, Hinata Hinata also felt genuinely happy. After all, she was just a child. End of this chapter.